Hello, fellow adventurers. Are you ready to embark on an unforgettable journey through the thick, untamed jungles and into the depths of mystery and legend? Get ready to walk alongside a team of explorers, each with their own dreams, fears, and secrets, as they uncover the ultimate treasure, the lost city of gold. This story will take you deep into ancient myths, through ancient ruins, and to the very heart of the jungle where danger lurks at every corner. Along the way, you'll discover that the true value of this city is more than gold. It's the wisdom of a civilization lost to time, and the choices that must be made when faced with unimaginable power. So, tighten your boots, ready your mind, and join me in uncovering the secret of the lost city of gold. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Map of Lost Legends. It was a cool morning in late spring when Dr. Nicholas Lawson stumbled across the piece of parchment that would change the course of his life. The smell of dust and aged paper filled the small, cluttered office in the back of the university library. Nicholas had spent the better part of the morning sifting through ancient manuscripts, hoping for a breakthrough on his latest research project. The field of archaeology had always been his passion, but the world of ancient civilizations was vast, and often the answers seemed to slip away like grains of sand through the fingers. He adjusted his glasses, peering at the faded ink on the yellowing page before him. It was an old journal, not a formal academic record, but the kind of scribbled notes that had once been penned by a treasure hunter, an explorer, or perhaps an obsessed historian. The handwriting was crude, the letters uneven, but the message was unmistakable. The lost city of gold. Nicholas leaned in, squinting at the text as if it might suddenly transform into a secret code. It was a name that had haunted his dreams ever since he was a boy, a name whispered in stories and legends, a treasure hunter's fantasy. For centuries, the myth of the lost city of gold had captivated the imaginations of adventurers. Rumors had circulated that somewhere deep in the jungles of South America lay a city built entirely of gold, a thriving civilization hidden for thousands of years. Those who had gone searching for it were either lost forever or returned with nothing but tales of the jungle's deadly dangers. But this journal was different. The man who had written it had apparently come closer than any other to finding the city. There, between the faded pages, was a map, a crude but detailed representation of what seemed to be an uncharted part of the rainforest. And in the corner of the map, barely visible due to the wear and tear of age, was a single note. The way to the city is hidden beneath the roots of the great tree of life. Follow the river to the north, and the city will reveal itself in time. Nicholas's heart skipped a beat. The great tree of life was a term he had come across in his studies of ancient cultures, though its meaning had always been vague. Some believed it referred to an enormous tree that symbolized the balance of life in ancient myths. Others thought it might be a literal landmark, hidden somewhere in the jungle. The river to the north was even more tantalizing, as few explorers had ventured far enough north to chart the river systems properly. His fingers trembled slightly as he traced the lines of the map, realizing that this was no ordinary find. If the map was real, then he had discovered something that could alter the course of his career, or perhaps even history itself. The lost city of gold wasn't just a myth anymore. It was a real possibility. For a moment, the weight of what he was holding sank in. The danger, the risks, the potential for failure. But then, as the quiet of the library pressed in around him, something inside Nicholas stirred. His lifelong obsession with lost civilizations and ancient mysteries had led him to this moment. He wasn't going to let this chance slip away. He quickly rolled the map back up and tucked it into his jacket, his mind racing with possibilities. He knew he had to act fast. The world would never believe this discovery unless he had evidence. Nicholas wasn't just an archaeologist. He was a dreamer who believed in the impossible. And now, the impossible was within his reach. He didn't waste another second. The next few steps would be the most important of his life. Nicholas Lawson was going to find the lost city of gold. Chapter 2. Assembling the team, Nicholas Lawson sat in his cramped apartment that evening, the glow of his desk lamp casting long shadows on the walls. The map lay spread out before him, its edges worn and its ink fading in places, but every line seemed to pulse with possibility. He could already picture the journey ahead, days spent hacking through dense jungle, nights around campfires with the team, and that moment when they would lay eyes on the lost city of gold. But he knew that he couldn't do it alone. He needed a team. Nicholas had spent years in academia, carefully studying the theories and myths surrounding ancient civilizations. He knew that while knowledge was vital, the practical side of discovery required more than just a keen mind. It required specialists. And the kind of specialists he needed were not the types that roamed the university halls. These were the ones who had ventured into the wilderness, those who had battled the jungles and survived, or who had the skills to decode ancient mysteries. He needed the best. He reached for his phone, dialing a number he hadn't called in years. A guide through the jungle. The first person he thought of was Isabella "Izzy" Vargas, a seasoned jungle guide with a reputation for knowing the Amazon better than any map. Nicholas had met her during a previous excavation in the Andes, where she had led a group of archaeologists through treacherous terrain. Her fearless attitude and intimate knowledge of South America's wilds had earned her the trust of many high-profile expeditions. The phone rang several times before it was picked up. Nicholas leaned back in his chair as the familiar voice answered. "Vargas here. Who's this?" The voice was sharp, but warm, with a hint of humor behind it. "It's Nicholas. Nicholas Lawson," he said, his heart beating a little faster. "I'm hoping to convince you to come out of retirement for one last job." There was a pause on the other end. "Lawson, you're the one who can't stop talking about those lost cities. Let me guess, you found a new one, right?" Nicholas smiled at her bluntness. "You could say that. I've found something. A real, honest-to-gold city. And I need someone who can get us through the jungle alive. You in?" There was a long silence, during which Nicholas could almost hear Izzy weighing her options. The jungles of South America weren't kind to anyone who ventured into them unprepared, and the more remote areas were even worse. But then she spoke again, her voice steady. "You know I don't go on these kinds of adventures for gold, Lawson. But I've got a soft spot for crazy archaeologists. So yeah, I'll do it. But this time, I'm picking the route." Nicholas grinned, feeling the first sparks of excitement ignite inside him. "Deal. You won't regret it. I'll be in touch with the details." The tech expert next. Nicholas knew he had to bring in someone who could map the jungle terrain and help with navigation. Modern-day explorers had technology that past adventurers couldn't even dream of: satellite imagery, drones, and advanced GPS systems. But this kind of tech wasn't something Nicholas was familiar with. He turned to his second choice, Miles Chong, a tech-savvy adventurer with a talent for using the latest gadgets in the field. Miles had a history of aiding scientific expeditions, providing tech support to researchers working in remote locations. He wasn't an archaeologist, but his ability to turn a simple drone into a navigation tool was something Nicholas admired. He quickly shot Miles a message, explaining the discovery and asking if he was willing to join the team. It took only a few hours before he got a response. "You know I don't turn down a good challenge. When do we leave?" Miles' message was short and to the point, just like the man himself. Nicholas felt a sense of relief wash over him. Miles was a bit of a wild card, prone to getting lost in his gadgets, but his expertise was undeniable. The historian and linguist, the third member of Nicholas's team, was someone he didn't know as well but had heard of through academic circles. Dr. Catherine "Cat" O'Reilly was a linguist and historian who specialized in ancient South American civilizations. Nicholas had met her at a few conferences, where her work on Inca and pre-Inca cultures had made waves. She was a rising star in the field, and her expertise with ancient languages and symbols would be invaluable in deciphering the inscriptions that they might encounter in the lost city of gold. He sent her an email explaining the mission, though he wasn't sure what kind of response he would get. Catherine had a reputation for being meticulous, cautious, and more focused on publishing than on fieldwork. A few hours later, he got a response. "This sounds like the opportunity of a lifetime. I'm in. Let's talk details." Nicholas felt a wave of satisfaction at her quick acceptance. She was exactly the kind of scholar who could provide the depth of knowledge they needed when the team inevitably encountered the city's ancient writings and symbols. The rival treasure hunter lastly. There was the matter of the rival treasure hunter. Nicholas had debated whether or not to bring in Dan Graves. Dan wasn't an archaeologist or an academic. He was a hunter of treasure, a man driven by the thrill of discovery and profit. They had crossed paths many times during their careers, always circling the same archaeological sites, both competing for rare finds. Nicholas didn't trust him, but Dan was good at getting results. His connections to black market buyers and his ability to dig up resources and recruits could be a valuable asset. So, Nicholas made the call. "Graves," he said when the call was answered. Well, if it isn't the good Dr. Lawson," came the smooth, confident voice on the other end. "What's this? A new expedition? And you're calling me for help? I must be doing something right." Nicholas didn't bother with pleasantries. "I'm looking for a partner on a job. I'm going after the lost city of gold. You want in?" There was a brief silence before Dan spoke again, his voice low with interest. "The lost city? You're serious, huh? You know the dangers of that kind of quest, right?" "I'm aware," Nicholas said, "but I need someone with your talents. Someone who can get results." There was a soft laugh from Dan's end. "You've got a deal. You and me, just like old times. Let's see what kind of treasure we can find." Nicholas didn't trust Dan, but he knew that in this line of work, a certain amount of risk was necessary, and he had no choice now. Dan's expertise would be useful in the search for hidden riches, even if the man's motivations didn't align with his own. That evening, as Nicholas looked over the map again, his heart raced. The team was coming together. Isabella Vargas, Miles Chong, Catherine O'Reilly, and even Daniel Graves. Each one was a key piece in a puzzle that would lead to the lost city of Gold. It was a diverse group, driven by different motivations, but together they might just stand a chance at finding what no one else had. Nicholas took a deep breath and placed a hand on the map. It was more than just a guide to gold. It was the beginning of an adventure that could change everything. Tomorrow he would meet them. Tomorrow the expedition would begin. Chapter 3. Into the heart of the jungle, the team assembled at a small, nondescript airport in Manaus, Brazil, a bustling city deep in the Amazon. The thick, humid air was thick with the scent of earth and water. There was a sense of urgency among the group, a shared understanding that the journey ahead would be like no other. Nicholas stood near the tarmac, scanning the crowd for familiar faces, his mind racing with the possibilities and dangers of what lay beyond the runway. He'd always imagined starting a great expedition with fanfare and ceremony, maybe with a press conference, the cameras flashing. But that was the reality of academia. This was the reality of adventure. It was just a handful of people, packing light, meeting in a remote part of the world. No one was waiting for them to succeed. No one cared if they failed. It was just them and the jungle. Isabella Izzy Vargas arrived first, as expected. She stood tall with a casual confidence that Nicholas envied. Dressed in practical cargo pants, a tight-fitting t-shirt, and a wide-brimmed hat, she looked like someone who had lived her entire life in the wilderness. Her boots thudded against the tarmac as she walked toward him, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Lawson," she said with a nod, her eyes scanning the rest of the team. "You actually managed to pull this off, huh? It's good to see you." Nicholas gave her a smile. "Good to see you too, Izzy. Thanks for agreeing to join us." Yeah. Let's just hope you've got more than a crumpled map to offer." Her voice held a mix of sarcasm and curiosity, but there was no doubt in her eyes. She was ready for whatever the jungle could throw at them. As she greeted the others, Nicholas scanned the horizon. The dense jungle that surrounded the small airstrip was thick with life, an impenetrable sea of green. He couldn't help but think about the myths that surrounded this place, about the civilizations that had risen and fallen beneath its canopy. The lost city of gold was somewhere out there, buried under centuries of trees, vines, and earth, somewhere no one had ever found. Miles Chong arrived next, lugging a backpack that seemed far too heavy for a trip like this. His thick glasses glinted in the sun as he fiddled with his smartwatch, probably running diagnostics on his gadgets for the 100th time. Nicholas had to suppress a smile. Miles was always in his own world, obsessed with his equipment. "Hey, Nick," Miles greeted, walking up with a raised eyebrow. "I've got the drones ready, just in case. You never know when we'll need a bird's-eye view of the terrain." "Perfect," Nicholas said, relieved. Miles had been more than willing to join the expedition, and his expertise in technology could prove invaluable. It wasn't just about mapping the area. Miles was also excellent at tracking real-time data and keeping the team connected, even in the remotest corners of the jungle. Catherine "Cat" O'Reilly was next, walking toward them with an air of quiet confidence. Her dark hair was tied back in a neat ponytail, and she carried a thick backpack filled with notebooks and field gear. Catherine was calm and methodical, the kind of person who thrived in the world of ancient languages and inscriptions. She had been skeptical of the map at first, but after weeks of research, she was convinced there was something to it. She had agreed to join the expedition, but only after Nicholas had promised to keep things scientific. No wild guesses, no reckless claims, only the truth. "You made it," Nicholas said, offering her a smile. "How's the prep?" "Everything's in order," she said, adjusting her glasses. "I've got the translations ready for anything we might find along the way. Let's just hope there's something to translate." "I'm sure there will be," Nicholas replied, his voice betraying a hint of excitement. The last to arrive was Daniel Graves, and as always, he made an entrance. He walked toward the group with the swagger of someone who owned the world. Unlike the others, Dan wasn't dressed for practicality. His expensive boots and sleek jacket made him look more like he was attending a high-stakes business meeting than heading into one of the most dangerous jungles on Earth. His smirk was evident, and there was something about his confidence that made Nicholas uneasy. "Looks like the gang's all here," Dan said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I didn't realize I'd be traveling with such an elite crowd." Izzy shot him a pointed glance. "Don't get too comfortable, Graves. The jungle doesn't care who you are." Nicholas stepped forward, his voice firm. "Dan, we're here for one thing, the lost city of gold. Keep your ego in check and your eye on the prize. This isn't about personal glory." Dan raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. He knew the stakes. Still, Nicholas could sense the tension between them. Dan had his own agenda, and while he was good at finding things, there was always a sense that he was looking for more than just the gold, more than just the city. He wanted something beyond what the rest of the team could see. The journey begins the next morning. The team boarded a small propeller plane that would take them further into the heart of the Amazon. The engine roared to life, and as the plane lifted off the ground, the sprawling city of Manaus disappeared beneath the dense canopy of trees. Below them, the green sea of jungle stretched out, uninterrupted for miles in every direction. Izzy sat by the window, looking out at the vastness of the Amazon, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the horizon. "The river's about an hour away," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "We'll need to land soon and then travel by boat." Catherine, who had been reading a notebook, glanced up and nodded. "I've read about the rivers in this region. Some are still uncharted. It's easy to get lost if you don't know the right landmarks." Nicholas leaned forward in his seat, his eyes focused on the horizon. "That's why we have you, Izzy, to keep us on track." Miles, who had been fiddling with his gadgets, suddenly looked up. "I've got the route plotted. GPS and satellite imagery are all ready, though I'll need to recalibrate once we get closer to the river." "Good," Nicholas said, appreciating the attention to detail. The technology would give them an edge, but he knew it wouldn't be foolproof. The jungle had a way of throwing even the most sophisticated equipment into chaos. The plane finally touched down on a small, makeshift airstrip by the river. The heat hit them instantly as the door opened, a blast of warm, humid air. The thick, humid jungle was alive with sounds, chirping insects, distant bird calls, the rustling of leaves. A man waited for them at the edge of the airstrip, a local guide who would assist them as they navigated the river. He greeted Izzy with a firm handshake, and soon their boats were loaded with supplies, and they were on their way. As they cruised down the river, the jungle closed in around them. The towering trees seemed to stretch forever, their roots dipping into the water as if holding the land together. The boat cut through the murky water, the engines' roar the only sound that pierced the quiet of the jungle. The deeper they went, the more Nicholas felt the weight of the journey pressing down on him. He was no stranger to fieldwork, but this was different. The myths about the lost city of gold had haunted him for years, but now it felt real, as though it was just out of reach. The land was alive with ancient secrets, and Nicholas was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. But as they moved deeper into the jungle, something shifted. It was a subtle feeling at first, just a twinge of unease, a sense that they weren't alone. Nicholas glanced over at the team, but no one seemed to share his concern. He shook it off, convincing himself it was just the weight of anticipation. The adventure had only just begun.